Hey, what's up everyone? Tachi here. So in today's video, we're going to talk about what units are the best to roll for in NightZero. So you could consider this somewhat of a tier list, but it's less abstract because obviously there's not too much data on this game. As far as I'm aware from what I've researched, this game is not out in Korea or Japan yet. If it came out today along with global servers. So there's pretty much no data on this game. So this is going to be solely based on my opinion and what I'm reading on these character skills. Now, keep in mind, obviously, I'm not just some random nobody who's never played any games before. I have played games like this before. Obviously, if you are new to the channel, you might not know. I play Brown Dust, which is, it's not exactly the same, but it's a very similar battle system. And obviously, I also play other gacha games, and I have for many years. So at least it's a somewhat informed opinion. With that in mind, let's start. We're going to start with damage dealers. One of the best damage dealers in my opinion is Yamato no Orochi. I don't know why they spelled his name wrong, or Yamata no Orochi. Yeah, they still spelled it wrong. Either way, based on the Japanese legend of the eight-tailed snake that also has 8 heads, this is a character that has very interesting skills. Let's start out with the passive skills. Trigger severe burn state on enemy before attacking. Increase sustained damage before the attack. Basically what this means is that before your attack, so you're about to hit an enemy, right before your actual initial hit goes, you severely burn them, which is a tick damage, and then you increase your sustained damage by 140%, which refers to the burn. The second passive is trigger hit transfer state on ally in the same column before the attack. Hit transfer. Transfer all attack to the ally at the very front row. Basically, what he does is that he makes the ally in front, all the way in the front, take any hits that would normally hit him. Which, if you don't know, is a very good self-preservation skill. And then obviously, he increases his defense penetration before he attacks, which is great again. Now, unholy skill refers to basically having these, I don't know if you can see them, but these two weapons right here. These two here. When you have them, you gain like a skill. I guess you can consider it something like an awakening skill per se. It's something similar to that. Increase allies attack, trigger, take ability, trigger, decrease. I hate how they word everything in this game, by the way. It's very confusing sometimes. Trigger, decrease immunity, stay it on yourself at the start of battle, increase your damage rate. Now obviously this increases not only yourself but other people in these specific columns. And then the decrease immunity gives you decrease, oh my god, why do they have to word it like this? And they spelled damage wrong. Jesus Christ, I don't know why they do this. But basically what it means is that it decreases the amount of damage you take from sustained damage. Which I don't know why they word it like that. It's so confusing. Deal damage to enemy when attacking. Trigger severe. This is your active skill, by the way, in case you didn't read it here. And yes, there are active skills in this game. You don't have to play it on full auto. Trigger ban heal state on the ally after attack. And then obviously this is another burn skill. So you can see that he's the type of person that tries to like whittle you down with like a burn. So the analogy I would think of is he's similar to Foxy, but minus the multi-hitting part. He just burns you down. Now, the next character I'm interested in, and I believe is also fairly strong, is Tyr. Now, unfortunately, I don't know exactly where Tyr is from, but I'm pretty sure she's somewhere from Europe. Deal follow-up damage in proportion to your critical hit rate to the enemy after attack. If you dealt critical damage, which means if you actually crit, then trigger burn state on enemy. So if you actually crit against the enemy, you will burn them. And on top of that, you also deal follow-up damage based on your crit rate. So this kind of unit, you want to build full crit in any way possible. You just want to fuck shit up. And then you just let your shit just do work. You just burn. Always increase your critical damage during battle. Increase critical damage by 140%. So yeah, clearly, if the unit is getting free crit damage, you want to build crit chance. Unholy skill, increase allies attack. Increase your critical rate at the start of battle. Increase your damage rate during the battle. So during the battle refers to your actual first hit and your follow-up. So Increase attack by 1620, 345. This is also one of those things that buffs allies as well, not just yourself. Increase crit rate by 35%, duration 10 turns, perfect. Increase crit damage rate by 9.4. That's actually very small for a crit rate, for a crit damage rate buff. Very interesting that they would decide to do it like that. Normally your crit damage rate is the one that it has a higher percentage, since your crit rate can only go up to 100% or so. Sword of Judgment, active skill, deal damage to enemy when attacking, trigger weakening state to the enemy before the attack. Deal follow-up damage in proportion to your critical rate to the enemy after the attack. So basically it's a double combo. When you weaken them, they always take crit damage, which is perfect, and it also adds into to the second part of this skill. Basically just means you're guaranteed the follow-up damage, and then again the follow-up damage is your crit rate +1 times your attack rate. It's very strong. Basically you're dealing like almost 2 to 3, well, always 2. You're dealing like 2 to 3 times more damage, plus your actual crit damage goes into effect as well. So it's a very strong skill. You deal a fuck ton of damage. And then the final one here that I want to talk about is Indra. Indra, deal additional damage to enemies proportional to the number of enemies in the attack area. So basically, the more enemies inside of her attack squares, which as you can see is 9, the more damage you're going to deal, which is a lot of damage. And then obviously she also has trigger stun state to the enemy before they attack. So before she attacks, she stuns them. And the reason why this is very strong is because obviously if the enemy has some sort of counter ability, this will stop them because they can't do anything. And obviously it also stops them from actually attacking you if their turn is next or something. Now, the additional damage portion is attack time 75% per enemy in the attack area. So if there's 2, you do 150% additional damage to each of them. So it's very strong. Obviously, if they're all tiled up together, it makes the attack deal a fuck ton of damage. And then obviously it can crit as well. Every attack you get turns to a crit. I hate when they word things like this. Ah, there it goes. Okay, so every attack that you get hit by, the person that's stunned is going to be a crit. So perfect, it helps you. Trigger poison state to enemy after the attack. So after she attacks an enemy, she poisons them, which is obviously just something that deals tick damage. And then on top of that, it also decreases attack by 4% every turn, which is it is a stacking effect, by the way. So at the end of it, you will deal 24. You will have a 24% reduced attack until the tick finishes. Control weather. Let's see, trigger barrier additional state on yourself at the start of battle. So at the start of your attack you get a barrier and it increases your damage rate as well. Then obviously it increases your attack and your allies attack. Barrier additional damage, yeah, we know barrier is basically just a shield. Max HP times 100%, so that is fairly useful. It does last 10 turns and you increase your damage by 10%. And then her active skill is deal damage according to the number of enemies. It's the same thing as the initial skill then. If the number of enemies is greater than 3, deal additional damage. Yeah, so it's just slightly more damage. It seems. Slightly more damage. But it's still very strong, as you can see. She's a very good character. I remember I was using her in the closed beta and she did a fuck ton of damage. Now let's move on to tankers. For tankers, personally, I saw Shiva originally as a very strong character, but then I realized that I think Wukong is just a better version of him. So let's start out with Wukong. On hit, trigger barrier additional HP state on yourself. On hit, trigger sustained heal state on yourself. So when you get hit, you get a barrier that's instant, by the way, and a heal that's going to continue going on per turn afterwards. So barrier, obviously it ignores some damage. It's 23% of your max HP and it lasts 10 turns. And then the sustain heal portion is heal HP every turn for the duration, which is also 10 turns for 19% of your max HP every turn. Her second passive is on death, resurrect with 1 HP only once and trigger barrier additional HP state on yourself. Now additional HP blah blah blah, but it's 117% of your max HP for 3 turns. So this is basically just going to revive her and help her stay up just for a little bit longer. Just enough for you to hopefully kill whatever the hell is killing her. And then her unholy skill, King's Authority, increase allies max HP, increase your damage reduction rate, increase max HP by 9,720, which is a lot. On hit heal, so when you get hit, you automatically heal for 21% of your max HP, and it increases your attack damage, your damage reduction by 4.6%, which is not much, but it's something. So next is Serenia. I don't know how to pronounce that. I've seen her in some games, but I can never pronounce it correctly. Her first passive is Doe Under the Moonlight. Trigger distraction state on yourself after the attack. Trigger barrier additional HP state on yourself after the attack. So after she gets hit, she gets a barrier, and she also distracts. I don't know what distract is, but let's read it. Get all attack aim to ally. Yeah, that's right. I remember what it is. It's the one that basically pseudo pulls in all the attacks. It's almost like a taunt. Get all attacks aim to ally in the attack range where you are in. So, for example, if she was getting hit by Tyr, if I'm not mistaken, actually it was Indra who had the 9 squares, right? If she was getting hit by Indra, instead of her other, let's say 4 allies that are also there getting hit, she's the only one that gets hit. So something similar to Cecilia in Brown does. And then she also gets a barrier, which is equal to 50% of her max HP when she does so. Her second passive skill is Blessing of a Runaway. Trigger barrier additional HP state on ally in the same row, including yourself, after the attack. So this gives you and your ally a barrier that's equal to 25% of your max HP when you guys get hit. So obviously these two will trigger at the same time. Her unholy skill, Feral Instincts, increase allies max HP, trigger link sub state on the allies in the same row, and give you link main state at the start of battle. Increase your damage reduction rate. So you give your allies 11,000 damage, and then transfer all attack to allies. Like I said, it's basically the same thing as Cecilia. And then you obviously have also an increased damage reduction rate of 17% on top of, you know, this extra one as well. So fairly useful to not die. And then her active skill is Hitting a Deer. Very odd names out here, I'm telling you. But what it means is deal damage to enemy when attacking, restore your HP after the attack, trigger barrier additional HP state on ally in the same row as much of the HP as you recovered beyond your max HP. So if you were at max HP and you healed for 10,000 damage, which obviously is just a made up number, you will definitely not heal that much. You will give your ally 10,000 shield damage, attack times 300%, recover HP, max HP times 77%. Actually, I take that back, maybe you might heal that much. Barrier, additional HP, ignore a certain amount of damage taken, blah blah blah, 10 turns. So she does her job, she heals, she takes in attacks from herself. She also blocks skippers, which is fairly useful. I have an entire video on discussing what those actually mean, by the way, block S, because I'm sure that not all of you are going to be reading all of the things, like the little help things that they have. No one goes out of their way to read that shit. So my next character choice is Thor, which everyone should know. Always increase your defense during battle. Always increase your damage reduction rate during battle. Increase defense by 3,520 and increase damage reduction rate by 34%. So he's a tank. Always trigger ban follow-up attack. So basically any character that deals follow-up damage, like I believe Indra had some follow-up damage, completely nullified against him. It just bans himself from it, and he does not take it at all. His unholy skill, Electrical Charge, increase allies max HP, trigger on hit remove sustained heal, on hit remove buff stamp to yourself at the start of battle. So basically, if he gets hit, he removes sustained heals from them, and on hit he also removes buffs from them, and he takes less damage. I don't know, it's just very strong. Thunderstrike, active skill, deal damage to enemy when attacking, increase allies defense in the same row, including you, before the attack. Remove all buff and sustain heal state on the enemy before the attack, increase defense before the attack. So this is also just in case if there's some sort of counter of some sort, you increase your defense, you will take less damage. The damage is attack times 336%, increase allies defense by 1,920 divided by the number of allies in the same row. So if there's multiple allies, each one gets successively less, not successively, but they just get less overall defense. It divides it among them, and then you increase your defense by 3,840. So as you can tell, this is just a really tank. He's just there solely to tank. That's all he's there for. Now moving on to supports, honestly all of them are really good. There's no real need to even compare them, but I will just list them since there's only 3. So first of all, Aurora, first passive, Princess of the Dream World, increase allies damage rate before attack, trigger barrier, additional HP stayed on yourself before attack, damage reduction rate 21%, max HP times 50% for the barrier, so a pretty decent reduction, and it also gives a barrier. You can't ignore that. That's pretty decent. And then the second passive, Incarnation of Sleepheads, or wait, why is it Sleepheads? Anyways, trigger resurrect state on main target ally before the attack. This effect is applied only once to each devil. Resurrect on death, resurrect and remove all state triggered before death. So basically, you auto revive allies. It's just very strong. Unholy skill, sleeping time, increase allies max HP, trigger resurrect state on yourself at the start of battle, increase your damage reduction rate, increase max HP by 11,400 in columns 1, 2, and 3. Resurrect on death, resurrect and remove all state triggered before death, max HP times 90%. So it's almost a full revive, and then you increase your damage reduction rate by 5%. And then her active skill is Narcolepsy. Deal damage to enemy when attacking, increase allies damage reduction rate before they attack, trigger barrier additional. So it's basically the same as her passive skill. This seems to be an ongoing thing. Damage times 300% attack, increase damage reduction rate by 21%, and it also gives a barrier for 50%. It's just strong. None of them, you won't go wrong with any of them really. However, do keep in mind, I would highly suggest re-rolling for a damage dealer or a defender, or both, considering you have 2 selectives. I would highly suggest it. Luckily in this game you can actually get guaranteed SSRs, so there's that. You have a fairly high likelihood of getting them. So Enki, I have her right now. I'm gonna re-roll this account though. Protector of Mankind, first passive skill, increase allies damage rate before the attack, decrease enemies defense and deal additional damage before the attack. So here's a reflector, increase damage rate by 54%, so it's a buff that makes your allies deal 54% more damage. And then to them, you decrease their defense by 5,070, and you also deal additional damage for attack times 182%. So pretty decent. Always trigger stealth state on yourself during battle, so she can't be targeted, which is good because sometimes people will automatically hit them, like if you put them in a bad position, but since she's stealth, it'll just go over her and hit someone else. Her unholy skill is Winning Wisdom, increase allies attack trigger, take ability, trigger severe burn state on yourself at the start of battle, increase your damage rate, increase attack by 1620, 3, 4, 5. Take ability, trigger severe burn, duration 10 turns. Severe burn, take damage ignoring defense every turn, and defense is decreased. So it's just strong. And then her active skill is Power of Water. Do additional damage to enemy when attacking. Increase allies damage rate before the attack. Decrease enemies defense. So again, it's just a stronger version of the passive skill. Not much to say about that. And then finally Zeus, the final SSR. Astrape. I'm not a fan of that word. Increase allies damage rate before the attack, remove enemies barrier in proportion to the enemy's max HP, and deal additional damage before the attack. Increase damage rate by 54%, so another strong buff, and it also removes most of the barrier. I would say some barriers will probably still live through this. Additional damage, attack times 182%. That should probably be enough to take care of the rest of it. The second passive is Might of Olympus. Always triggers hit transfer state on yourself during battle. Hit transfer transfers it to the ally at the front, which basically means that she will survive for longer. So her unholy skill, Lightning's Favor, increase allies attack, trigger, take ability, trigger infection, stay on yourself at the start of battle, increase damage rate by, and then down here, increase damage by 28%, every turn, duration 6 turn, that is a stack. Take damage ignoring barrier every turn during the duration. Interesting. So I'm gonna have to read up more on what exactly this entails, because the way it's worded kind of sounds like Zeus has a debuff on herself that makes her take damage every turn. But I will have to read up on that. I did not have any SSR supports before on my old account, unfortunately. I just had a bunch of SSR attackers and defenders. And then the active skill, Chain Lightning, active skill, deal damage to enemy when attacking, increase allies damage rate before the attack, remove enemy barrier in proportion to the enemy's max HP, and the damage is for attack times 280%, increased damage rate is 36%, remove barrier, target max HP 48%, and then the additional damage is attack times 140%. So in general, you don't really go wrong with any of the supports, but you have to keep in mind things like this, the support range, and how that functions on your team, because some of them are a little wonky to like actually land on your units. But things like these, like Enkis, are significantly easier in my personal opinion. So just keep that in mind. That is it for me. That is the end of this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to hit the like button or share it around to your friends, anyone who might be playing this game. If you guys want to see more content for other games, and look at that, that is an ad. Oh, I'm not a fan of that. If you guys are interested in seeing more game content, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Either way, that is all. Have a nice day.